Ladies and gentlemen, Financial Ape here. Welcome back to another one. Today we're going to be going over how options are priced. Okay? This formula right over here for calls and for puts is referred to as the Black-Scholes formula. It's very important to note that this formula, it works only for European style options. This does not work for American style options. Also, this formula for calls and for puts, it does not incorporate dividend payments. Okay, so if a stock pays dividends, this formula will have to change to incorporate the payment of that dividend. Okay, so this formula assumes European style options and it assumes no dividends. Okay, very important. The Black-Scholes formula, it was constructed in 1973 by Fisher Black, Mirren Scholes, and Robert Merton. What I want you to retain from this formula is that it is priced as a function of 5 variables. This is very, very important to understand. Those 5 variables are the spot price of the asset, right? Also referred to as the stock price. That's what we're referring to. The asset is the stock, okay? The strike price, which can also be referred to as the exercise price. In fact, when you use the word exercise price, people tend to use the symbol X. And when you use the word strike price, people use the symbol K. K here, there's a K over here as well. X here, there's an X over here as well. The third variable is the risk-free rate of interest. You can think of it as the US Treasury bills. Also, as I've mentioned before, all options have an expiration. And that's why we need to incorporate time to maturity or the time to expiration. Choose whichever one works for you. But we have to incorporate time. The last variable is the volatility of the asset. Okay? Remember, 5 variables, right? These 5 variables can be found in this formula, right? And this formula is for what again? It's for the European style options. But these 5 variables, they can also be used for American style options. That is very important to note as well. Okay? This whole formula, written like this, it works for European style options. But the 5 variables are common in European and American style options. How do we price American style options? Well, they're priced using a binomial, trinomial, or Bergson-Stanlins model. You don't have to know exactly what those models are, because in reality, you will never really have to price a European or price an American style option. I'm just showing you the formulas for some context. But once again, here, the call option of an American style option is priced using the stock price, strike price, interest rates, risk-free rate of interest, right? You have the time to maturity, and you have the volatility of the asset. The same thing for American style puts. Another way, because I know this formula is complicated, right? So another way you can price an option, there's a formula. I find this one's much more intuitive, right? And much easier to absorb. So another way you can price American or European style option is using the basic option formula, which means that an option has 2 components. It has the intrinsic value component and it has the time value component. The intrinsic value component is a function of the stock price and the strike price, whereas the time value is a function of the interest rate, right? The risk-free interest rate, the time to maturity, and the volatility of the asset. Now remember, this option price, it works for European and American style options, and it works for calls and puts. So both calls and puts have intrinsic value, and they also have time value. It's very important to note that. Another way to rewrite that formula above is using the exercise value as a substitute for the intrinsic value. It's the same thing. Intrinsic value, exercise value is the exact same thing. Okay? You can only exercise an option once you have intrinsic value. Okay? Same thing goes for the time value. Another words or other words for time value are extrinsic value. They both are a function of the same variables because they are essentially the same thing. Okay? This is the formula to calculate a call option. This is the same one for the put option. The only difference is the call option is the maximum between 0, the stock price minus the strike price. Whereas for the put option, it's the maximum between 0 and the strike price minus the stock price. You just switch those variables when you're dealing with a put. But essentially the formula still stays the same. Okay? I cannot stress this enough. The intrinsic value of a call or a put, it can never ever be negative. It is always positive or it's 0. Also, an option can only be in one out of the 3 states at a time. Those 3 states are out of the money, at the money, and in the money. So an option can either be out of the money, at the money, or in the money. I want to go over a little example on how to calculate intrinsic value. We're not going to calculate extrinsic value because once you have intrinsic value or exercise value, you can find extrinsic value by doing simple arithmetic. You simply take the price of the option minus the intrinsic value and you get the extrinsic value. Same thing for here. If you have the price of an option and you have the intrinsic value, you can do option price minus intrinsic value and you get the time value. Time value is somewhat complex to calculate, and I want to save you a step and keep your mind at ease. So I want to find the easiest way to get to the extrinsic value, and that way is simply having this. You already have. If you go on your brokerage app, it'll tell you the option price. It has to tell you your option price. So this is known. This is unknown, but it can be easily calculated using the stock price and strike price. So once you have this, you do the option price minus the exercise price. The exercise value, and then you get the extrinsic value. That's why we're not going to calculate the extrinsic value. All right. So if we were to calculate the intrinsic value of a call and a put option for stock ticker XYZ, all right, this is a hypothetical stock. If we assume a strike price of 50, a stock price of 55, the intrinsic value can easily be calculated by finding the maximum between 0 and 55 minus 50. 55 minus 50 is 5. So what is the maximum value between 0 and 5? In other words, which number is higher between 5 and 0? Well, it's obviously 5. And that's why your intrinsic value is 5 here. And therefore, you're in the money. Okay? Whenever you have intrinsic value that is positive, you are always in the money. Think of intrinsic value. It starts with what? I-N. Intrinsic, all right? It starts with the letters I-N. And so does in the money. It also starts with the letters I-N. Example number 2. We have a strike price of 50, a stock price of 50. How do you calculate intrinsic value? Well, you take the maximum between 0 and 50 minus 50. 50 minus 50 is 0. What is the higher number between 0 and 0? Well, it's obviously 0 here. So you're at the money. At the money means your strike price is the exact same as your stock price. Example number 3 for the call option. Strike price 50. Stock price is 45 now. Intrinsic value is going to be the maximum between 0 and 45 minus 50. Well, wait a second. 45 minus 50? 50 is higher. I'm going to have a negative number here. That negative number is going to be minus 5. So what is the higher number between 0 and minus 5? It's not minus 5. It's 0. So once again, you see the intrinsic value is 0. And as I've stated, intrinsic value is either 0 or a positive number. For my OTM example, it was 0. For my ATM example, it was 0. And for my ITM, it was 5. So this clearly illustrates what I was stating here. Intrinsic value can't be negative. It is either positive or 0. As you can see, it's positive here and 0 for these two examples. Hopefully that's clear. Moving on to the put option. Put option, the formula to calculate intrinsic value, remember I said it's essentially the same, but we're going to just switch two variables. We're going to switch the order of the two variables. Remember, for the call option, it was stock price minus strike price. Now for the put, okay, it's going to be strike price minus the stock price. So all we're going to do is we're going to do a little switcheroo. We're going to switch up the variables. But the core aspect of the calculation stays the same. Put option, strike price 50, stock price 55. Intrinsic value is the maximum between 0, 50 minus 55. Right? So 50 minus 55, that's a negative number. That's negative 5. Right? What is the maximum number between 0 and negative 5? Well, it's 0. So I'm out of the money. OTM. Out of the money in this case means that the strike price is, the stock price, right? That's what S stands for. It's the stock price. The stock price is higher than my strike price. So I'm out of the money. Example number 2 for the put option. 50 for the strike price, and the stock price is also 50. Well, I'm clearly at the money, right? Because my strike price and stock price are the exact same. So if I was to calculate the intrinsic value, I would again do maximum between the 0 and 50 minus 50. Well, this is 0. 50 minus 50 is 0, and so is 0. So what is the maximum value between 0 and 0? Well, it's clearly 0. Therefore, your intrinsic value is 0. Last example for the put option. The strike price is once again 50, and the stock price is 45. Intrinsic value is the maximum between 0 and 50 minus 45. Well, I have a positive number this time, right? That positive number is 5. What is the maximum? In other words, which number is higher between 0 and 5? 5 is the higher number. Therefore, my intrinsic value is 5. And I'm also ITM. I'm in the money. If I had a real option that had all these criterias, I would actually be able to exercise this option because I'm in the money. Same thing here. Once you're in the money, you have exercise value. Therefore, you can exercise your option. Okay? Do not be intimidated by options. As I always say, just learn the theory behind options, and it's going to make your life that much easier when you're trying to learn how to play with options. Okay? Don't go jumping into buying options right away or selling options right away. Please understand the theory behind it. Know that options are priced using 5 main variables. You should be able to know that. They are priced using the stock price, the strike price, interest rates, time, and the volatility of an asset. Works for both calls and puts. Okay? What is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value means that for a call option, that your stock price is higher than your strike price. If that's the case, all right, that means you have intrinsic value. That's all it is. Okay? Same thing for a put. If you have intrinsic value, that means that your strike price is higher than the stock price. That's what intrinsic value is. You need intrinsic value in order to exercise a call option or a put option. Okay? I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to make things more complicated. I know a lot of you are new, and so that's why I'm trying to kiss, guys. I'm trying to keep it super simple. KISS. That's my slogan. I love to keep things super simple. As always, thank you for the opportunity. If you have any further questions at all, feel free to ask your question in the comment section. I love answering questions, so please ask away. It keeps me busy. Thank you for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, see you all on the moon. Have a phenomenal day.